Welcome everybody to Tales from the 90s, your retro time machine back to my favorite time. This time we are going back to October of 1992. It's going to be our second trip into 92 and our first time doing it in October, so I'm going to be talking a little bit of Halloween here. So, let's get going.
Marathons, wrestling wars, and morning yawns. Play kickball in the street, man, those days can't be beat. Tales from the 90s never die. Well, it's a big show. Yeah, it's the big bad show tonight, y'all.
That's right, you can see some of these movies back here. Spoiler, we're going to be doing a special about my favorite, only one of these movies actually came out in this month. But for Halloween, went back and looked at all the horror movies that came out in the year, and put together, of the ones that came out that year, I've seen 5 of them, so I'll give you my top 5 of them, and we got another movie back here to talk about in the movies, but the old Megazord's back. I figure we do a change, not have the sign up every week. We're going to get into this podcast. I know we're talking about the 90s, but a little bit about what's going on now. We might not have a working vehicle. First, we had a flat tire. Stupid Geico couldn't find somebody for roadside assistance, so we left it there a couple days. Went back. We got it taken to Big O. They actually gave us a spare tire they had. It's not the exact size, but we're going to get a new one. Anyway, long story short, got in it. Went down the road a little bit to the store, everything working fine. Came back out, car wouldn't start. Now it didn't seem like a battery issue or a starter. I don't know. It seemed like the gas wasn't getting to it. I don't know. Hoping for the best on that one. If you want to donate to the car fund, no, seriously. If you guys really did want to donate or something, you could I'll give you my PayPal if you message me. But I'm not expecting anything. I'm not trying to be a cyber beggar. Just jokingly popped into my head. I do these podcasts for free, and I know I don't have a big audience. Hopefully someday you might go back and watch this, and I got, thousands and thousands of viewers and stuff. But, even if I've said before, if I'm doing this podcast and only my brothers and my family are watching, fine with me, But I do make it for everybody in case, because, I talk about some personal memories, but I also talk about, excuse my voice, I'm a little bit under the weather too, but I also talk about, what was going on then, give a little overview of it, do a little bit of research, not completely in-depth, although I do have a little in-depth section that's starting this week, and I'll get into that. We do want to mention a bonus episode. It's coming out. This has been a hell of a week, and it's only Monday, so I'm recording this on Monday. On Friday, Valentine's Day, if you don't have anything to do, if you don't have a date, or before your date, you can watch my video. I'm dropping a bonus episode. I believe it's our 5th bonus episode. It's my top 50 Nickelodeon shows. Now, Power Ranger moving in the background again. Thing's haunted. Anyway, it's top 50 Nickelodeon shows. And on this, it's not just like Nickelodeon, they're called first run shows, where it's they were created for Nickelodeon or first shown on Nickelodeon. It's everything. It's Nicktoons, and it's shows they acquired, like Inspector Gadget was a show they acquired, but I first watched it on Nickelodeon, and mostly watched it on Nickelodeon. Shows like Mr. Wizard, and even stuff that I'd seen in syndication, like Garfield and Friends. Just anything that was on Nickelodeon that I watched, because a lot of my memories aren't just the only Nickelodeon stuff. Like there's, of course, Double Dare and those great shows, but there was also, like I said, there's Heathcliff, Underdog, some of those that didn't start on Nickelodeon, but I remember fondly watching them. Anyway, I came up with a top 50 list of them, and I'm going to rank them as my personal list. I'll go a little in-depth, not too much, a little bit more than I do here. I try to speed things along, as if you could clearly see. But so we're going to start our episode this week with one of our favorite segments. It's the Saturday Nickelodeon lineup. Well, sometimes it changes. Sometimes it's Saturday morning cartoons. Sometimes it's weekday Nickelodeon, Saturday or Sunday. It depends. I change it up. This week we're going to be looking at, and I found a new site, the site that I've been using. It's like a fandom or something like that site. I found another Nickelodeon one, and this actually lists everything that's on Nick at Night, because you know Nick at Night ran from like, depending on the time period, this time period from 8 at night until like 6 in the morning or something. But I actually found one that lists like all of those. All the other ones just stopped at the Nick at Night. So I'll go over some of those, some memories of those. But anyway, we're gonna, and this actually gives dates too. The other one was a little like it gives by month. This actually goes by date. So we're gonna choose. I randomly chose October 10th of 1992. Pull that up here, and I don't look at these ahead of time, just so I can give my kind of my first reactions on them. Now this is fandom. It's called nickstory.fandom.com. It's a pretty cool site they got on here. But it starts at midnight. We got Mr. Ed, classic, one of the most the oldest shows that was on Nick at Night, I think. I believe Mr. Ed might be the 50s, or it may be in the 60s. I'm not exactly sure. But of course, that's the talking horse, and it's hilarious. The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. I never seen that. I seen commercials for it. It starred I can't think of his name. Denver, I think his last name is Denver. It's not John Denver. The guy who played Gilligan. It's gonna kill me. I can't think of his name right now. But it starred him in it, and I never seen it. The Patty Duke Show, one of those classic ones I've never seen, along with the Donna Reed Show. Fernwood Tonight. I've never even heard of that one. And of course, everybody knows the Mary Tyler Moore Show and the Dick Van Dyke Show. I don't have a lot of memories of those. You know, when I was a kid, that's an old fuddy-duddy show. You know, I was saying the same thing about MASH, but now I'm like obsessed with MASH and I've seen every episode. Get Smart and Dragnet, which the humor in those would have went over my head in those days if I would have watched them. Now watching back some of those shows, those are just the kind of humor on there is hilarious. Kind of a precursor to the Naked Gun movies. Then 4:30 in the morning, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Man, I love that. Sometimes if I was staying with my grandma and I'd wake up and that'd be on in the morning, it would scare the crap out of me. Even though it's old, it was surprising to have a horror show on Nickelodeon besides Are You Afraid of the Dark that was more geared towards adults. And then we got Mr. Ed and the Many Loves of Dobie Gills again. Then we start the Nickelodeon portion at 6 with Kids Court. I've never seen that. It's obviously a take on the People's Court. And then we got the Little Bits. I've never heard of that one. Then at 7 in the morning, one of my all-time favorites, Eureka's Castle. Definitely on my top 50 list. I actually, spoiler, I haven't actually ranked them. I've just gotten the list together. I'm still going, got to go rank them. And it's going to be really hard to come up with. Think I know what my number 1 and 2 is. But all the other ones is going to be hard because everything that made the list is so good and so in me from childhood. Then at 7:30 we got Lassie. Of course, that's a classic show from the 50s. I think it's 50s or maybe it's 60s. Just like with the Mr. Ed, I'm not sure the exact time period, but love that show. And then starting at 8, we've got the start of the Nicktoons for the day. We've got Doug, classic, one of the classic original Nicktoons. Later went to Disney. Then we've got Rugrats. Of course, that's probably the most famous Nicktoon of all. Rugrats is still big these days. I mean, you could put this out for every generation, and every generation would be able to identify with this. And not even just as, like, infants, which is, you know, the Rugrats are. You identify it as small kids, you know, pre-adolescent, teenagers, adults. and it hits each one different. Like, some of the stuff they say on there you don't get as kids, but as adults you're like, well, that was kind of dirty. Can't believe they said that. But then a whole hour of Muppet Babies. See, that's another one that wasn't a Nickelodeon, the first ran show, but is made my list because I watched it mostly on Nickelodeon. I love that. Muppet Babies. I always have to do that stupid part. You can never see her face and just all the adventures they go on. I remember one where they went in a closet and it was like they showed a scene from Star Wars. And then at 10, one of my favorite cartoons of all time, Heathcliff. Him and his alley cat buddies. That was hilarious. Then we got Nickelodeon's Most Wanted, Yogi Bear. I never knew why they called it that. Like, they didn't change the name of Heathcliff or Muppet Babies, but it was Nickelodeon's Most Wanted, Yogi Bear. I don't know, maybe some copyright thing, or I don't know. Then is You Can't Do That on Television for an hour. That is a classic one. And just some of the stuff they did on there, I don't know how they got away with. Of course, that's where the Nickelodeon slime was invented. And of course, my favorite part of that was they do because it's like a skit type show, like a Mad TV or Saturday Night Live. But when they do the firing squad, and the kid who tried to talk himself out of it, it was hilarious. And then we got an hour of Dennis the Menace. I'm not exactly sure if that's the TV show or the cartoon. Either way, they're good. I was just looking ahead here. Flipper at 1, which of course, just like Lassie, one of those classic shows. You know, Flipper always saved the day. But the one I was just looking at, I was like, Beyond Belief. I don't remember that on there. I don't think that can't be Beyond Belief, fact or fiction. I'm actually looking this up. I've only done this once before. Because Beyond Belief, fact or fiction came later. Okay. This is on the Lost Media Wiki, so this is rare apparently. Let's read a little bit about this. Sorry for the delay here. My computer sucks. That's why it takes me so long to get wrestling videos and stuff up, but I try anyway. It says, Beyond Belief, not to be confused with the 1997 sci-fi series. So their mind went there too. Documentary-style series aired on Nickelodeon from 92 to 94. Each episode features multiple segments containing out-of-the-ordinary facts on various things, such as why the French catacombs are there, and other interesting facts why animals like the lion tamarin became an endangered species. So, yeah, I've never heard of that. There's only one resurfaced episode that says it's somewhere on YouTube. Check that out if you can. I'm going to check that out too. That's pretty cool. See, I like this one. It gives more in-depth background information. And then there's one called Nika, 1968. I don't know what that is. But it went on for almost 4 hours. Maybe it was probably a movie. Oh, I think it's a movie, yeah, because this one does more in-depth. And it was Saturday. Sometimes they would show movies. Never heard of that movie. Then we got Nick News for a half hour, which most of us kids didn't care for the Nick News. It was kind of the precursor to Channel 1, or I don't know if it was the same. If you remember what Channel 1 is, the news they always showed, they would show it in schools. Usually at the beginning of the day, some schools or classes would show the end of the day. It would like be broadcast and you'd watch it, It was, a short little 10-minute thing. Sometimes it would be about 20 minutes when it was Friday for the weekend. But, pretty cool thing. We didn't start watching it till middle school. I know some schools had it in elementary school. Anyway, then we start some of the games, I can't think of the name. Not video games. Game shows. My mind's in 700 places. I'm doing this podcast to try to get out of the real world and go back to this time when I didn't have to worry about vehicles, because that was my mom's job. We didn't have to worry about that as kids. Man. The good old days. That's why it's the good old days, because as the Rugrats would say, there's no responsibilities. But anyway, get the picture. What great game show on there. Hey, I got it right, game show. It was one of the... Yeah, it was the one where you can... you got to try to uncover the picture. Kind of reminded me of Concentration a little bit, if you remember Concentration. Or as they called it, Classic Concentration in the 80s, hosted by Alex Trebek. Jeopardy host, of course. But it was I think it was Mike O'Malley that hosted that. He also hosted Guts, so he had a lot of shows on here. Kind of like Mark Summers with Double Dare and What Would You Do? But yeah, Get the Picture was definitely an all-time favorite. I wish they'd get that on Paramount Plus. I don't think they have it. If they do, let me know. Then Welcome Freshmen. I never watched that one. Then we got Salute Your Shorts, which is a classic Nickelodeon, geared towards teens, but kids could get it too. It was like just showing you what life was like. It made everybody want to go to summer camp, which I never got to. So, and then we got Family Double Dare, my favorite version of Double Dare of all time. the obstacle course, of course, is the greatest part of it, and to see what prizes they would get. And just you'd be yelling at the screen sometimes, like, "Come on, can you not get this? It's right there." You got to get the orange flag in each of the 8 obstacles. Then we got Nickelodeon Guts, like I just talked about. Mike O'Malley hosted that. That was the original Guts. And they had Global Guts later on, where they'd have kids from throughout the world. This was just kids in the U.S. or I guess it'd be Canada, whoever got to the show, but it was sort of like an American Gladiators for kids. Then at 7 we got Doug again, and 7:30 Rugrats, and then of course this is Saturday night, so we got Snick. Starting at 8, Clarissa Explains It All, one of my favorite Melissa Joan Hart show. I didn't really care for Sabrina; it wasn't really my type of show, but Clarissa Explains It All. Even though it seems like it was geared towards girls, I still love that show. It was like, of course everybody was in love with her. And then Roundhouse. I didn't really watch that much. Then at 9 we got the Ren and Stimpy show. It's good. Another thing about this is sometimes these got the episode names in it. The first episode, because as you know, Ren and Stimpy was kind of split into 2. Kind of like like Rugrats, that had 2 parts, 2 different stories to it. Ren's Toothache was the first one, but the second one, and I remember this, the Rubber Nipple Salesman. The stupidest stuff they had on this show. And then at 9:30, Are You Afraid of the Dark? The classic. The horror, the Tales from the Crypt for children, basically. The episode was called The Tale of the Dark Music. So if you've seen that show, that was that episode. And then, kind of cool, where they go to Nick at Night, they start off with Alfred Hitchcock Presents. So if any kids got lucky and got to stay up, after 10, they got to watch another horror show. Then we got Green Acres. Just seriously, this freaking... I never watched Green Acres, and I've only seen a few episodes, and it's funny. But this song... And actually I have it on my computer because I have some, TV theme songs and just stuff randomly plays on my computer. But Green Acres song, I'm not joking. At least once a day, usually multiple times, will just get stuck in my head. And I'll find myself singing out loud and making up words to it, usually involving my dog's names. But the freaking Green Acres song is always in my head. Then we finished the day off with the Mary Tyler Moore Show and Dragnet. And then, if I just went down to the notes, Beyond Belief, a series about unusual people, places, and things. See, if I would have just went down, I could have took 5 minutes off the podcast. Anyway, another TV-related thing that we always talk about during this segment is the TGIF. And in this, of course, October... the TV season just started the month before. We're into season 4 of Family Matters, where Waldo, Eddie's best friend, and then Myra, the one that was obsessed with Urkel, became regular characters. And I just recently found out that I'm ashamed I didn't put her name down to remember it. But the actress who played Myra had actually died in 1998 from some rare form of cancer. Now, I couldn't believe I didn't know about that, but yeah, that's certainly sad. She was very young and just hate seeing things like that. Like I said, I'm ashamed I don't know her actual name. Season 2 of Step by Step was going on. Of course, that was made by the same people who made Family Matters. Dinosaurs, classic show with Baby Sinclair. Not the mama, not the mama. They were in season 3. And then a show called Camp Wilder. They had just started, and it was actually canceled before the season was over. It only got 19 episodes, didn't even get a conclusion. Just not a lot of ratings for that one. Go to a segment here that I started doing a couple weeks ago. This is kind of a watch-along with commercials. This one's a little bit longer than my normal one, so sorry if it drags on the podcast a little bit, but we're going to go back to specifically October 24th of 1992. These are commercials during an MTV show. It was called Rock and Jock, a basketball special. They always, later they'd have wrestling ones too, but they'd always have try to incorporate sports to try to get, what teenagers were, because of course MTV was geared towards teenagers and early adult. Just trying, basketball was real huge then. Of course, Michael Jordan, the Dream Team, I believe that was 92, the Olympics, which once I get to June of this year of 92, I'll be talking about that. I think that was the year of the Dream Team. So obviously basketball was huge then, but these are the commercials that aired then. Alright guys, we are back for some more commercials. This one's going to be about 15 minutes long. Here we go.
Yeah, it's gonna be just us.
Bon Jovi. I didn't listen to it at the time, but now it's one of my favorite of all time. Please don't get me on a copyright. Keep the faith. Innuendos there. Of course, this is MTV. Of course, they're gonna.
MTV's Rock and Jive Basketball is brought to you by Butterfinger. Like Bart says, nobody better lay a
Finger on my Butterfinger.
And by Coca-Cola Classic. You can't beat the real thing.
Touch for refreshment. Good old Coca-Cola. Can't ever decide whether I like them better or Pepsi. I know there's a difference. Oh, here we go, Butterfinger. Simpsons.
First lesson. Oh man. Lesson number 2.
I definitely remember this commercial.
Now we take Butterfinger break.
Wah!
Get a crispity,
Crunchy,
crunchy,
peanut butter crust
in every bite of Butterfinger.
Lesson number 3. Nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger.
Classic.
Shouts goes out to my man Calvin
Oh,
Klein for looking
jeez.
out for the drawers. Not saying I would do another Fruit of the Loom commercial or nothing like that.
Marky Mark, Mark Wahlberg, back when he was trying to be a rapper.
Good and they hold me snug.
Okay,
I'm
he's
about to go get some skins. I'm not gonna put on like no silk underwear.
definitely MTV commercial.
Next question. Oh, the best protection against AIDS is to keep your Calvins on. Now that
Okay.
could definitely come between me and my Calvins. Do you have Calvin Klein underwear on?
That was a strange commercial. It's just saying, okay, let's do it, but let's not have AIDS. Keep your underwear on. Okay.
It's not even about race. This is about ignorance.
It's about trust.
If you're gonna blame him, then you better blame me. Because we were in this together.
It's about truth.
Can you live with that? Black and white like this?
Oliver Stone presents Zebrahead. It's about change.
Never seen that one.
It's about time. Rated R. At theaters now.
Max Factor International creates sheer impact.
Of course, the makeup commercials and everything were huge back then.
New color and light.
You couldn't go a commercial break without seeing something about makeup.
Flawless. Indoors, outdoors.
Max Factor, I don't know if they still exist, but they were a huge one back then.
New color and light. Flawless in any kind of light. Impact. Max Factor International. Autumn.
McDonald's.
Cast new colors. A time for
Sorry about the video quality, of course, recorded VHS.
Just that. Sharing the warmth of our new oven-baked apple pies. A cinnamon
New apple pies were new then.
delicious apple filling. And now
Those things are definitely good.
your local McDonald's donates 25 cents to Ronald McDonald Children's Charities, who bring warmth and hope to kids everywhere. Try our new baked apple pie.
Of course, a lot of places have the Ronald McDonald House. Definitely a charity they've been working on. You can say what you want about McDonald's and everything else, you know. Okay, what is this? Another Coke commercial. Coke in bottles. You can't hardly find them. There's a little grocery store here called Pride that sells them. Still.
Job. I've been pounding the pavement for 2 months.
All this doublespeak, I don't know who to believe.
The sun is frying us a little more every day.
Just a PSA.
Fly under a magnifying glass.
After school special.
Educating, recycling, carpooling, their only hope.
Nobody's looking out for me but me. It's something you get used to if you want to get anywhere. That's the way the system works.
Hey, I think that's the one guy from, I can't remember his name, from Mad TV.
No, really.
I can't remember his name. Talk is cheap. Rock, of course, Rock the Vote. That's when that started.
The House of Pancakes. The House of
Trying to get the younger generation involved in voting.
Best of House of Style hosted
Of course, Bill Clinton was playing the saxophone trying to appeal to that younger generation.
Where appearances count.
Linda, I'm not really your boyfriend. I'm an actor.
Ha! Macaulay Culkin.
This house. It's just a set.
Okay.
Your parents? They're extras. Oh, Mac, here, have a Sprite. See, Linda? It's all an illusion. The only thing that isn't fake is this and us.
It's definitely either in between the Home Alones or right after the second. I think it looks like in between. Right. Well, answer my question. Right, literally, right in between.
Conditioners without all those heavy-feeling oils that can weigh hair down.
Oh, I know her. I can't think of her name. Is it Tiffany Amber Thiessen, I think is her name? I know she was on Baywatch.
My cousin Vinny.
I seen that a few years ago. That movie is hilarious. Travis Tritt's on the soundtrack. Redid his song Bible Belt specifically for the movie. Sorry about this video quality. And back then the games and stuff they did and stuff you got in and you're under the you win a 20 ounce in a pop bottle. Or the cereal box prizes where you just get the toy right in the cereal box. Don't remember that soap.
Issues, events, entertainment. Teenagers talk about things important to them. Tune in and listen to what teens are saying about life as a teenager in San Antonio.
The show is for everyone, all ages.
That'd be interesting to watch these days to see how, the difference between a life teenager from the 1992 to now. Obviously, this is local San Antonio version of the MTV theater, but it still would be interesting to see.
There are a lot of reasons I like the cold. I like playing basketball. I like playing football.
George Foreman. He named all his kids George.
Yo, George, crown me. But I'm pretty good at boxing. But what I really like, though, is all the food you can get. So if you're a little younger than I am, say from 6 to 19, and you like some fun, join the code. I don't know about this kick it thing, though. I'd rather just hit it.
Excuse me, do you know what stock options are?
I wish I did.
The information you should know is in the Wall Street Journal's video guide to money and
They had a lot of these books or videotapes. Just call and get this.
That's over 20% off the newsstand price.
Call toll free 800.
Of course, to sell the Wall Street Journal, probably the most boring newspaper in history.
That's 800-862-3333.
Another Rock the Vote. 2 Rock the Vote commercials back to back.
Hello, I'm Senator Bill Bradley of New Jersey and a former player for the New York Knicks. There was no MTV when I was running around in short pants.
Why is his face all closed up with him playing in the background?
Playing a contest like today's game. Speaking of contests, we'll soon be electing the next president of the United States.
Why are they zoomed into his face, though?
This land will have a direct impact on you. Since these elections will have an impact on you, you should have an impact.
I mean, definitely a good. They were definitely pushing hard for younger adults and those just turned 18 and stuff to vote then. And of course, to go with the basketball theme of the TV show these commercials were on. More voting. If you didn't know it was election time, you would definitely tell by this. I wonder if the candidates will get their own commercial on here. Definitely trying to speak to different cultures in this video, which is of course important to do. Of course, the early 90s were such a a racially tense time with the all the riots in LA and the Rodney King crap that happened, those racist police officers. Definitely a hot button issue at the time, and they're definitely trying to.
Linda, I'm not really your boyfriend.
Of course, we get a repeat commercial here.
This house, it's just a set. Your parents, they're extras. Oh, Mac.
This one's a lot more jumpy. Sorry about the video quality again.
Linda, it's all an illusion. The only thing that isn't fake is this and us. Linda?
Of course, again.
In Home Alone 2, November 20th, rated PG.
Is this another Butterfinger commercial?
Hey Joe, we're down the line
Yep.
Butterfinger.
This video quality's really bad in this. I definitely remember this commercial.
Simpson going deep.
You know, ain't nobody gonna take it from Bart.
In every bite of Butterfinger.
Nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger.
Oh, not this one again.
Calvin Klein, good looking out for the drawers. Not saying I would do another Fruit of the Loom commercial or nothing like that, because they don't make the hype shorts. These are the 90s, man. They just fit good and they hold me snug. So if I'm about to go get some skins, I'm not going to put on like no silk underwear. Oh, she got
Even on MTV, I can't believe they get away with a commercial like this.
No, the best protection against AIDS is to keep your Calvins on. Now that could definitely come between me and my
See, it's a mixed message saying, oh, keep your underwear on, don't get AIDS. But then he's like, oh, that'll definitely, like,
Jackson's Super Guy and Kirby.
Ha.
Nintendo. In some ways, Kirby lost big. No big hair, no big muscles, no weapons, nothing. All Kirby's got is appetite. Kirby's Dreamland, the thrilling adventure game on Game Boy. Kirby munches, spits back.
Yeah, we'll be talking about this in a little bit.
Dreamland. He's Kirby, and he packs a mean bite.
The #1 selling Game Boy game you'll see in a little bit here.
It's time to make an appointment.
Up.
Be good for your health. Trust me, I'm a doctor. Oh, sorry. The doctor.
Dr. Giggles.
How about a free examination?
Me and Josh and Travis's favorite movie. Not favorite all time, but of course one of the favorites. Oh, that creepy laugh. Be talking about this later on too.
Now playing at theaters everywhere.
Scottie Pippen. Charles Barkley. Basketball. I can't explain the popularity of basketball during this time. It had to have been the peak in the 90s. I mean, obviously still popular, but I mean, like, pop culture. People that didn't even watch basketball would know these people. May never even seen them play a game, but they knew them, who they were and what teams they played for.
MTV now plays 1,000 videos.
1,000 video crotch grabs. Okay, 1,000 videos a week on MTV. Do they even play 1,000 videos a year anymore? Do they even play one video a day or a year?
MTV's Rock and Jock Basketball.
Another bumper for the show.
Like Bart says, nobody
Well, a couple more minutes left on these. These have been pretty good.
And by Coca-Cola Classic, you can't beat the real thing.
I may cut some of these repeats out. No, we've seen this one already, so I'm talking, but I may cut it out. I don't know. Depends on what I do. There's definitely been a few repeats, like that Home Alone 2 Sprite commercial.
Get a crispity, crunchity, peanut buttery burst in every bite of Butterfinger.
Ain't had a Butterfinger forever.
Nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger.
The old adjusting the stuff. Obviously, this isn't a commercial, but you definitely gotta play around with the controls on your TV. Refreshing. Gotta be another Coke one. Yep. Hey, at least the Coke commercials on here haven't been repeats. Coca-Cola Classic, because New Coke failed. Cindy Crawford. One of the most popular supermodels of all time, especially the 90s.
Revlon New Complexion Makeup.
Of course, famous for that beauty mark.
Go one-on-one with me in my new Shape Your Body workout video. Tough, so you'll see results. Fun, so you'll stay with it.
Get a $5 rebate and $10 in Revlon coupons with purchase a video and any 2 Revlon products.
It took nearly 80 years for the automobile industry.
Local car commercials, those are always so interesting.
Buying a new car. And Southway Ford, 12 short months to change that. At Southway Ford, we don't play games. You don't have to talk.
Why does she look like Monica Lewinsky? Considering Bill Clinton's about to be elected. I bet Bill got one of those cars.
Changing the way South Texans drive their new Ford. The no hassle way.
Jeden Herbst morgen nichts anderes als Horns Oktoberfest. Die Musik.
Is that video calibration part of the commercial or part of the video?
Oktoberfest-Pizza vom Pizza Hut gibt.
Is that Pizza Hut?
Ein pfundiges Fleisch, 3 Orten leckeren Käse, und eine deftige Soße dabei.
Now, for a limited time, get a medium Oktoberfest pizza for $7.99. As always, your second pizza is half its regular.
That was pretty expensive for 90s medium pizza.
Ausgezeichnet.
I got expensive pizza in Texas back then.
Alright folks, coming up in just a couple minutes, get psyched, we're going to be counting down the top 10 rock and rap videos.
And of course we're getting to the end, so
Are you real psyched?
definitely thank you for checking this out. Hopefully it was, sorry about the video quality, hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll get back to the podcast. The nanny, you can never see her face, and just all the adventures that we're going to go into wrestling now. Being October, only one pay-per-view this month, WCW, one of their biggest ones, WCW Halloween Havoc. Now, when you think of WCW, if you're a fan, Starrcade is known as their biggest one. It started with the NWA. It was always promoted like it was their like their WrestleMania. But by watching Eric Bischoff's podcast, 83 Weeks, great podcast by the way, he mentioned that really their biggest show of the year that they put like the most focus on was actually Halloween Havoc. They had it in Las Vegas. It was heavily sponsored by Slim Jim. So they, that was their, internally that was their biggest show, even though the fans always thought it was Starrcade. Anyway, great, couple months in the year usually. But this one is October 25th, and it's from Philadelphia. And the main event was a spin the wheel, make the deal match. I always love that. They'd have the wheel. Of course, Bischoff had that as Raw Roulette later on, but it was spin the wheel, make the deal, and it came up the coal miner's glove. That was the old gimmick where apparently the glove had lead in it or something because it was a coal miner's glove, and it was on a pole, and if you grab it down, you can use it. Anyway, Sting defeated Ravishing Rick Rude in the main event for that, and a couple big title changes happened in this month. The biggest being Bret Hart won his very first WWF title, and not even on TV. He won it at a house show. He beat Ric Flair October 12th. And that was done because I'd read Ric Flair's biography and Bret Hart's, by the way. And Ric Flair had some kind of, I think it was some kind of ear issue, and he was having vertigo, and he needed to, I think he had some kind of surgery or something. Anyway, he had to lose the title. And they had to do it quickly, so they did it at a house show. So Bret Hart's very first championship, he won, and only the local crowd seen until they would show it later on. But not many of not many title changes of the huge title happened at house shows. So that was huge news. And then of course Shawn Michaels would defeat the British Bulldog for the Intercontinental title October 27th at Saturday night's main event, which actually wouldn't air until the next month, so I'll be talking about that again when I go to November of '92. Back then it was common for them to tape shows even a month in advance. Just like the next one here, the WWF Tag Team titles changed hands. Money Inc., which was $1 Million Man and IRS, they would defeat the Natural Disasters for the tag team titles October 13th on Wrestling Challenge, which was one of their syndicated shows, but it wouldn't air till November 1st. So, title change happens, and like 2.5 weeks later, it finally airs. And then another thing of note, Matt Hardy made his wrestling debut in October of '92. Of course, we all know the legendary Hardy Boys. We're going to move to video games now. We got the top selling games of the month. It seems like only the early '90s have these lists. At least, I guess later on they didn't have, because video games were exploding in popularity, they didn't have a way to track the games, month to month as easily. But anyway, of course, this is '92, so Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis was in their battle, but they were still selling original Nintendo games, and the number one selling game was Tecmo Super Bowl. Obviously a football game, not NFL branded or anything, but it was still a big seller. Super Nintendo was Street Fighter II. Classic game there. Of course, Mortal Kombat, and I'll talk about them in a minute, was always known as probably the premier number one of all time fighting game. Street Fighter, especially Street Fighter II, is right there. And for Sega Genesis, it was NHLPA, which I'm guessing stands for National Hockey League Players Association. They had to get their brand on it. Hockey 93, a hockey game. I don't enjoy watching hockey, but playing the hockey games were fun, especially that era of games. And for Nintendo Game Boy, it was Kirby's Dream Land was the #1 game. And then they also have top-selling computer games, because of course this is when, you know, computer games were huge too. For MS-DOS, DOS, however you want to say it, the #1 game is King's Quest VI, and Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? Of course, I know that mostly as the PBS game show, but it was a huge computer game before that. For Macintosh, now would just be known as Apple, Prince of Persia. For CD-ROM, which CD-ROM games were new then, it was Battle Chess, a chess game. But two big events in October. October 8th, Midway would release Mortal Kombat to arcades. That was Mortal Kombat's debut, was in the arcades, and of course, and you know, it introduced the blood and the fatalities, and it became a monster success. Was released for console, famously released to Super Nintendo without the fatalities, without the blood, and people were pissed. So when they came out with the second one, they put a warning on there, but they released the full game to Super Nintendo, and the fans were happy then. But also October 21st saw Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins released for Nintendo Game Boy. And this would be the first appearance of Wario. Sort of like the Bizarre World version of Mario. Wario's in everything now, especially the party games like the Mario Kart and stuff. Usually talk about Tales from the Crypt. Last couple episodes I haven't, because I haven't been, the month that I've been doing hasn't been in the season. They had just wrapped Season 4 the month before, and I've talked about my highlights of Season 4, so I'm not going to do it again. If you want to watch that, I'm sure you can find it somewhere on here. I don't want to bore people that have already watched these with having to hear stuff again. Unless I got something new to add. But, speaking of something new to add, two things. One, a huge thing in a lot of people's lives, Cartoon Network premiered October of 1992. Now, I will say that I'm not a huge Cartoon Network fan, only watched it sparingly, and it wasn't because, well, I guess there was a little bit of because of my loyalty to Nickelodeon, but that wasn't really the main reason didn't have cable. You know, we had it off and on, but didn't really have it full time at our house. I would only really get to see cable and Nickelodeon specifically when I'd go to my grandma's house, and I had just, you know, grown so accustomed to watching those shows I loved that it was hard to get into these other shows on, you know, of course I watched Scooby-Doo and stuff like that, but some of the other shows that they, and Johnny Quest, for some reason, I remember as one of the early Cartoon Network shows. Obviously it's not from that time period. I'm pretty sure that's an older one. But other than that, you know, I was too hooked on the Nickelodeon stuff to really switch. It was kind of hard, you know, hard to go to this other channel with all these other cartoons. You know, they had the Hanna-Barbera stuff, and I'd watch some of that, but some of the newer stuff, it's just like, you know, I like my Nickelodeon. So, I don't have a ton of memories of Cartoon Network, and I think I heard that it's gone now, I think, which is kind of sad, but definitely if you're from that time period and remember that fondly, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to disappoint you, and I'm definitely not talking down to it. They had a lot of good stuff on there. I know a lot of people like the Adult Swim stuff. I don't really care for that. It seemed to me like they tried too hard to be adult. They tried to be South Park, and I don't know which one came first. I don't really care, but really I don't have any bad things to say about Cartoon Network other than it wasn't Nickelodeon, so, you know, if it had been out first, I probably never would have seen Nickelodeon, so. But, we're going to do something new for the TV, because I've pretty much talked about every show, I think, in the 90s. You know, I've mentioned when I go through the lineups, I pretty much, you know, give a brief synopsis of every show. So, going forward, unless there's something new on there I haven't talked about, I want to kind of give a little spotlight to one show. And it'll be on during this time period, you know. So that'd be the only thing is it had to have been on during this time period, which this one was. This is Rescue 911. The classic theme, always almost scared you almost, because this is a serious show. It was always paired with Unsolved Mysteries. I think Rescue 911 was first. And of course it was hosted by William Shatner, of course, of Star Trek fame. And it ran from April 1989 to August 1996 on CBS. And yes, I have this written down because I wouldn't remember all this. So I'll be looking down some. But this show was actually never meant to be what it became. It became pretty much a teaching tool. One fact I have written down is at least 350 lives because of this show were saved, either by someone knowing to call 911, because you think 911 these days, yeah, call 911. It wasn't always common knowledge always, because 911 wasn't always a number. You know, you had to know the police number or, you know, whatever. Then 911 wasn't, you know, isn't something that's been around forever. I mean, if there's any, you know, teenagers or 20-year-olds watching it now, yeah, it's always been around, but there was a time when the 911 didn't exist. But this show, you know, first of all, taught you to dial 911, which really, you know, could really help save lives by getting emergency there quick. But it also taught people, you know, basic CPR, or at least getting them to go and learn CPR, or things to do, you know, if something happens to somebody. You know, over at least 350 lives are saved because of the show. It's never meant to be. It was supposed to be an entertainment show, obviously factual, but I mean, it became a teaching tool. And the show actually was adapted to 45 different countries over its run. And of course, countries didn't all have 911. They had their own version of that, and they would use that on there. And the show featured reenactments. It had a few like actual footage things, but mostly it was just reenactments, because I mean, it's a lot easier doing that than, I mean, these days you could do a whole show with, you know, stuff that you find. There's some products that actually came along because of the show. They came out with several books that were, you know, had some of the stories in it. And they actually had a handheld video game. You know, it wasn't Tiger, but you know, all those Tiger handheld video games they came out with for everything. I've never seen that. And they've also had a pinball machine, which is pretty cool. I've never seen any of those. But over the time, the show won multiple awards, including People's Choice Award for Favorite New Dramatic Television Show. And it had a few VHS releases here and there, like all shows kind of did in the 90s. You know, they weren't really interested in those days of putting out a full collection, just, you know, best of, or, you know, a certain type of, you know, category of shows that they would put out. But they haven't released any kind of DVD or Blu-ray. And I don't think it's available as far as like streaming every episode, but it does have its own 24/7 channel on Pluto TV if you want to check that out. Pluto TV is of course free, and you know, episodes play 24 hours a day. You could literally sit there and have it on all day long. But pretty cool stuff there with Rescue 911, all-time favorite show. One memory I want to talk about during this time was this was the time where we just met Marky Foe a couple months ago, I think. And I don't know, I think, yeah, he was living at the apartment at this time. He moved into our apartment. We were living in Mount Carmel, Ohio, in the apartments. This was a month or two before we'd moved to Norwood. But before that time, there was actually a time period where my mom and dad were actually, you know, getting back together, it seemed, you know, which was amazing for me, because I always wanted that. I mean, aside from the fact that my brothers and sisters wouldn't have been here, I wish they would have been able to get back together. And that's no disrespect to Steve, who would, you know, like I said, that they would later get together. And, you know, both of my younger sisters were born because of that. And like I said, no disrespect to him, but I wish that they would have, my mom and dad, because everybody wants their mom and dad to get back together, if, you know, if they love both their parents. And they were actually, you know, I believe they were starting to get back together. And then I don't know what happened, but I think there was this neighbor, I can't remember his name, it might have been Tim or something. I could just be making that up, but he started to come around, because I guess he moved in, and I knew him and my mom weren't doing anything, because I was there all the time, and they weren't ever off together. But my dad started getting jealous, and probably had something to do with, you know, the fact, and I'm not trying to cast any dispersions on my mom, but, you know, she ended up leaving my dad, I don't know what order of things, but, you know, for my brother, Josh's dad, which was, other than my brothers being born, was a mistake, obviously. I wouldn't change that, because I wouldn't have my brothers. But, you know, like I said, I don't know, maybe he was jealous, or thought that she was gonna get with somebody else, or I don't know, but he got real mad and accused her of cheating on her or something one night, and that kind of broke things off, and it just killed me because like my dad was around, and he would stay some. I can't tell you the feeling it was. The nights he would actually stay and be there. Both of them, and I'm getting tears in my eyes. Both of them be there in the morning, like something I never thought would ever happen, and that was I firmly believe it was my dad's fault. I'm not looking like, oh, he shouldn't. It was, everybody has their own faults in relationships. That's my parents, so that's not my blame to give them. They they do the things that they do, and as long as it's not affecting us kids, and I mean that did affect me obviously, but I mean what parents do in their love lives and who they're with and who they're talking to and who they're not talking to, none of our business. But I just remember I was like, no. And then like a couple months later, I think the guy did get together with her. It wasn't right away, so like I said, they weren't actually doing anything, that I don't believe. But a couple months, and that didn't last long. And then Marky Foe came in the picture. But sorry, that was just, it was like, I can't explain those couple nights when I'd get up in the morning and my dad would be there and my mom would be there, and I always didn't know how to act. It's like, wow, we're gonna be a family, like. And my brother Josh was there, and Travis was just a baby then. I mean, and knowing my dad, he would have treated him like his own, but it wasn't to be. And my dad ended up going on and having a girlfriend. I think it was, yeah, they weren't married. Her name was Joan. I don't know if she watches these podcasts. I don't believe I've ever met her, but I know we've talked on Facebook, and hopefully someday I will meet her. But I know they got together, and they were real close, and like I said, my mom beside Marky Foe. But if we hadn't been with Marky Foe, we wouldn't have my brother Clint. So I'm in some ways you'd love to change things, but you realize if you do, you're gonna lose out on what's really important, and what's really important is my brothers and my sisters. Because it wouldn't have been all. I'm sure I would have had problems with my dad growing up as a teenager, and I did have problems once we reconnected, which I'll get to in the 1999 episodes, and how we got reconnected after the whole Marky Foe saying he can't come around incident. But who knows? I might have not gotten along with him and caused problems. You don't know how things are gonna go. That's why podcast is kind of fun to look back, and it's kind of fun to think about what if. But by the way, if you don't know me, you don't know any of the people I'm talking about, I'm sorry. I'm going to move on. But yeah, but I mean, if you come from houses where parents have gotten divorced, you know how that can affect you in different ways and can affect them. And just, it's a bad thing whenever it happens, but it's always for a reason too, And I like to think in the end it all worked out. Like I said, I got my brothers and my sisters, Wouldn't trade that for the world. But we're going to move on to some music now. This one I talked about before. It's on the Hot 100, the Billboard charts, not the Marky Foe movie. But this song actually spent 13 weeks at #1, and it was in the middle of this right now. Boyz II Men's huge song, End of the Road, which my wife is a huge Boyz II Men fan. I've gotten their CD for her and listened to them, and they're good. It wasn't my type of music then, but listen to music now, it's like most of their songs are good songs. It's just I was completely, I don't want to say stuck in country, because I don't think it's a detriment to only listen to one type of music. It's good to expand your horizons, but at the same time you like what you like. You can only sit and try to like other stuff for so long. If you don't like it, why spend your time trying? If you tried, you tried. If you only like a certain type, and music's meant to be enjoyed, not to be debated and stuff, and a lot of people do that, and I get caught doing that too. But like I said, music I liked was country music, and I was listening to the American Country Countdown, and #1 for 2 weeks in this month was Colin Ray's song, In This Life. Colin Ray was huge in the 90s. Such a great voice. And In This Life was a beautiful love song. And then next is Randy Travis had a #1, If I Didn't Have You. It was kind of a funny, not a funny song, but a fun song where he's saying all this stuff would happen if he didn't have his girl, and he would get really low, and then really, just a certain way he sung this song is just so unique. Then we had a huge song to end the month that was #1 for 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks following, it was Winona Judd's debut solo single, "No One Else on Earth." This song was huge. Of course, a part of the Judds, and then hepatitis. I can't remember exactly which one, but she had to stop. You know, Naomi was the mom. Had to stop, so the Judds were done, but Winona started her solo career, and it started huge. But albums released in this month. The biggest one was Alan Jackson's A Lot About Living and a Little About Love. This album was huge. Went 6 times platinum, which is, if you don't know, platinum's a million, so it sold 6 million. It went to #1 on the U.S. Top Country Albums chart and won Album of the Year at the '93 ACM Awards. But #1 songs from this album were Chattahoochee, probably one of the the biggest song from this album, obviously, and one of his all-time biggest. And She's Got the Rhythm and I Got the Blues, which I think him and Randy Travis co-wrote. They co-wrote a couple of them. Before You Kill Us All, I think, was one they wrote, which was Randy's song. But yeah, there was a time in the '90s where they were writing songs together. I mean, I wish that would have continued. But also top 5 singles was Tonight I Climbed the Wall, great song. Who Says You Can't Have It All, didn't mean to rhyme there. And Mercury Blues. I have a funny song about that. It was always in commercials. Although when the commercials are on, he was doing a commercial for Ford. It's like, go downtown and buy a Ford truck or two instead of Mercury. But for some reason, Travis couldn't say Mercury. This obviously wasn't when it came out because he was a baby then, but a few years later, he would call it the Mercuridge. He's like, the Mercuridge Blue. It's like, what is a Mercuridge? He's like, I don't know what any words are. Anyway, he always called it the Mercuridge Blues. And that stuff like that always sticks with me. But my favorite song that wasn't a single is Tropical Depression. That's a good song. And then another huge album that came out was a debut album, John Michael Montgomery, Life's a Dance. Of course, John Michael Montgomery, one of my all-time favorites. His brother, Eddie Montgomery, famous for Montgomery Gentry, they came out, I don't know, about 6 or 7 years after John Michael. But by watching podcasts, I realized they were all, Eddie and Troy from Montgomery Gentry, they were actually out in the clubs before John Michael was. But this is his huge debut album, 3 times platinum. Singles from that were Life's a Dance, which was the top 5, his debut single. Definitely a great song. Beer and Bones was the top, I think, 21. Didn't go very far up the charts, but that's one of my dad's favorite songs. He would sing that all the time. I'm going to tell the story about, in the '99, one of them, when we reconnect, about some of the parodies he came up with, and really got me going on the parodies and stuff, which led to the Marky Foot radio show, which I'll be talking about that one soon. But and then the smash hit that went to #1 is I Love You, I Love You, I Love You. I Love the Way You Love Me. One of the all-time greatest songs of all time. Not just one of his greatest, one of the all-time greatest. And some sad news to end the music with. Roger Miller, of course known probably best for King of the Road. He was one of those, he could sing straight country, but a lot of his songs had a lot of humor in them. If you ever listen to any interviews, he's never serious. This guy's hilarious. But anyway, he died at 56 from throat cancer, so some sad news there. But kind of going with the Halloween theme, I talked a little bit about this before, but the first year Marky Foe was there, I had to go trick-or-treating as a hat tree. Now, I don't know if it's called a hat tree everywhere, or if this is something he called it. But he had this, like, I don't know how, I think it was like a coat rack, where it kind of went straight up, and it kind of had some things off to the side. But anyway, he had it full of hats, and he had like hundreds of hats. The ones I specifically remember, he had a hat that said FU on it. He had a yellow hat with a parrot beak that came out of it. I remember that specifically. And all kinds of, no sports hats, of course. At least I don't think so. But he called it the hat tree. So his great idea for our first Halloween together there in the apartments was, you're going to go as the hat tree. And I can't remember what he attached them to me with. But I had all his hats attached to me, probably even the FU hat, but the parrot hat stick right on my head. Yeah, he did something to attach them to me. And it was just, oh God, I was made fun of. At school, they went on for days. Look, it's Hat Boy. Look at Hat Boy. Where's your hat? Now I always wear hats, and I have tons of hats. I don't have a hat tree, but I need to get one. And my little nephew, I can't think straight. My grandson, my nephew's uncle's dog, my grandson Anthony, someday I'm going to make you a hat tree, I swear. You're going to be a hat tree. I'm probably banned from seeing him now. But just some great, funny, it wasn't great at the time, but it's hilarious to look back on now, the hat tree. Some of my all-time favorite Halloween costumes, though, were the year that me and Josh both went as turtles. I went as Leonardo, he went as Donatello. We had full turtle costumes. I'll save some of those costume stuff for other Halloween episodes. I don't want to run out of stuff to talk about, but I believe that was the year before or the year after, so. I remember us having the pajamas, too. I have a Leonardo red pajama top and bottom with Leonardo on it. His was Donatello, because that was our favorite turtles. You'd think it'd be Michelangelo, or with my attitude, Raphael, but just some fun times. And speaking of fun times, sports in October, of course, you've got the MLB postseason and the NFL going, and of course getting toward the end of NASCAR. But back then, the MLB postseason was not like today, where you have a bunch of teams that make it, and I have no problem with that. You know, you still gotta play to get to win the championship. You know, you don't get it handed to you just because maybe you shouldn't be in it because you're the 7th place team or something. But back then, only 4 teams made it. There's 2 leagues: American League, National League. 2 best teams, one from each division, the West and the East, made it to the League Championship Series, which is best of 7 games, and then the World Series was another best of 7. So, you know, nowadays they have more teams. You know, it gives more teams a chance, more fans a chance to see the games. Of course, more money on TV. Obviously, that's the biggest reason. But I like the way it is now. I don't think I would have preferred this as much then. It seems like kind of like we're getting right there. You know, I kind of like the way it is now, and with the NFL. You know, I don't want to see them expand to let everybody in, obviously. I think where they're at now, I don't think they should go any further. Unless they expand teams. But anyway, the American League teams were the Blue Jays and the Oakland Athletics, which I don't think they're in Oakland this year. I think they're in Las Vegas this year. I don't know if they changed names. I'll have to see when the season starts. We're recording this in middle of February, so it's getting there. But National League was the Braves and the Pirates. In the American League, the Blue Jays beat the A's in 6 games to get to the World Series, and the Braves beat the Pirates in 7 games to get to the World Series. And then in the World Series, it went 6 games. The Blue Jays of Toronto beat the Atlanta Braves in 6 games, and of course they'd be the first baseball team outside of the U.S. to win the World Series. The only, actually, because Montreal doesn't have a team anymore. They moved to Washington. But my team, the Reds, they finished in 2nd place and won 90 games, but they were 8 games back because, you know, so many teams in one division, and they only take the top teams. So you win 90 games now, you're almost shoo-in for the playoffs. 90 games back then, you're 8 games back and out. It kind of sucked. That's why I said I kind of like now. But the NFL was 2 months into their season. Best teams in the AFC were the Bills, Dolphins, and Steelers. They were all 6-2. My team, the Bengals, were last place, 3-5, which isn't bad for the Bengals in the 90s then. But the NFC, the Cowboys were 7-1. The Vikings, Saints, and 49ers were all 6-2. And of course, the Cowboys would beat the Bills in the Super Bowl. That was their first Super Bowl title in 15 years, and that was the start of the Cowboys and 49ers, teams in the 90s, basically. And then NASCAR, they were getting, November's their last month of the season, so they were getting there. 3 races this month. They had the Tyson Holly Farms 400 at North Wilkesboro Speedway. I couldn't say that again if you paid me. Jeff Bodine won that. Mark Martin won the Mellow Yellow 500. Man, I remember that Mellow Yellow car. Mellow Yellow is obviously still around, and it's good, but it don't taste as good as it did in the 90s. And it certainly ain't no Surge. But anyway, that was the Charlotte Motor Speedway. And then Kyle Petty won the AC Delco 500 at Rockingham Speedway. And the championship was won that year by Alan Kulwicki, who owned his own team. It was kind of like where'd this guy come from? He wasn't one of the big names and one of the big teams. But next, I want to talk a little bit of Halloween here. obviously, all the TV shows had their Halloween episodes, which I get mad when they show TV shows on cable, which I don't watch cable anymore anyway. I have all streaming stuff, but when they did, they would leave the Halloween and the Christmas episodes out when they show them in order, and just show those during those seasons. It really sucked. But the two that were most well known for that were The Simpsons and Roseanne. The Simpsons had their Treehouse of Horror 3 that year, and the Roseanne had their fourth season, so it was called Halloween 4. And that episode was kind of a parody of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, where Roseanne was visited by the ghost of Halloween, past, present, and future. And they'd go visit places, so that was kind of cool. And one horror anthology that only had 6 episodes, it got canceled. It was actually starred Robert Englund, was called Nightmare Cafe. Yeah, I think he was the owner of it, I think. That or the cook, I can't remember. We seen this on Sci-Fi a while ago, because I never seen it when it came out. It was about this cafe where you get second chances, and it's like has a supernatural theme, and it'll change locations. If you could find it anywhere on YouTube or something, obviously it don't have an end, but it's an anthology, so it's, it didn't need that, continue. So it's definitely a good show. But like I said before with these, I want to give my top 5 horror movies that were released in 1992. Number 5 was Children of the Corn 2: The Final Sacrifice. Of course, they bastardized the Children of the Corn movies, and even the original Children of the Corn movie didn't exactly follow the very short Stephen King story. And I like them for what they are, They're kind of fun to watch, goofy at times and ridiculous, but, that one came in at number 5. Number 4 was Stepfather 3. Definitely not one of my favorite of the Stepfathers. Better than the remake. But it's the one where he, the guy that played Stepfather in 1 and 2 didn't return the actor. So for the third one, they had him released from prison. He had facial surgery. They reconstructed his face so he looked different. I mean, I guess that's a good way to explain how it's not the same actor. Plus, it went with the story. You didn't recognize him. He didn't look like the same guy that killed all these people in his other town. But coming in at number 3, I actually have the DVD. So we'll knock these off. Pet Sematary 2. I have just the regular edition DVD here. Pet Sematary 2, probably my second favorite Pet Sematary movie. Obviously, the first is the best. Then this. Third would be Bloodlines, which they came out with recently, where it's kind of like a prequel of Judd's story, The Neighbor. And then, if I even had to put it on the list, I actually have it just to have a collection, but the remake, absolute garbage. But anyway, this one obviously doesn't really follow much of the story, other than it being the Pet Sematary, and the music's hilarious. Like, just the whiny music. Yeah, it's a fun movie, really, It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's directed by the woman who directed the first one. And it has a brief mention of the family. It says Ellie from the first one went crazy and hacked up her family in Chicago or something. It's not canon to the Stephen King series, and this is really not a Stephen King movie per se, even though I'd list it as one. But definitely, if you haven't seen Pet Sematary 2, give it a watch. This is not Pet Sematary 2 as in the remake. It's actually a movie called Pet Sematary 2. Starred Anthony Edwards was the dad, of course, known as Mark Green from ER, one of my favorite TV shows, which I just finished recently. I probably ain't gonna stay up there. My little drum set here, holding this stuff up. But coming in at number 2, the Stephen King movie, Sleepwalkers. This movie is insane. Like, the Sleepwalkers are these shape-shifting demons or something that cats can kill them for some reason. But they can, like, not only change the way they look, because they look like demon monsters, but they can look like people. But they can also change, like, the type of car they're in or something. But cats can go after them. Anyway, they have to feed, basically, and it's got to be on virgins, like, not that way. It's got to be, they, like, kind of, like, suck not the breath, but I don't know, their soul or something out of their mouth or something, and, like, feed it. Anyway, that ain't even the weirdest part. The weirdest part is the guy and the woman, their mother and son, and they sleep together. And they use the Sleepwalkers if you remember that from like the 60s, the instrumental called, I think it's called Sleepwalk or Sleepwalker, one of the two. But they play, that's their favorite song they play on the record player, especially when they're doing it. Anytime I hear that song, I'm like, oh, go sleep with your mom. Yeah. It's got cameo by Clive Barker in it, but just, it's insane, but it's goofy and it's fun. But my number one horror movie, and the movie that actually came out this month, which I'll be talking about movies next, but this one came out, was Dr. Giggles, played by Larry Drake, who also played the demented Santa Claus in one of the very first episodes of Tales from the Crypt and All Through the House. But yeah, Dr. Giggles was nuts. His dad was a doctor, and he went insane trying to save his mom, who had a bad heart, and he would like take people and try to take their hearts out. And anyway, the cops finally killed him, and they didn't even know about his son. He snuck out in the body of his mom, like sewed himself inside of his mom. But anyway, they found him. He went to the nut house. He escaped, and insanity ensues. But yeah, Dr. Giggles. Those are my top 5 horror movies of 1992. And like I said, Dr. Giggles out that month. Another movie out that month was Disney movie, The Mighty Ducks, classic. Of course, there's been 3 of those, and then there's a series which I haven't finished. I think there was 2 seasons. They kicked, what's his name? Just thinking about him the other, Emilio Estevez, Charlie Sheen's brother. They kicked him off the series because he wouldn't wear a mask, or no, because he didn't get the COVID shot, which it's, I'm going to get in where you should get a shot or not. Just, if someone doesn't want to get the shot, that's, shouldn't lose a role for, especially, an iconic role like the coach of the Mighty Ducks. But anyway, the Mighty Ducks, the very first one, of course, I think is the best. Of course, they based a whole minor league team and, what's that minor? No, it's the NHL, the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, and one of the hockey minor leagues in Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Mighty Ducks, which I went to see quite a few times at the Cincinnati Gardens, which sadly no longer exist. I miss that place. I never got to watch wrestling there. They had wrestling at the Cincinnati Gardens back when wrestling wasn't as huge, like right before the boom of the Attitude Era. I never got to watch it there. It would have been really fun. But yeah, the Mighty Ducks is definitely one of those classic Disney movies. It's a sports movie, but even if you don't like sports, the heart in that movie is, what really sells it. And then the third movie that came out this month is one on the bottom, Pure Country 2, The Gift, which isn't a bad movie. It's pretty good. But the one on the top, Pure Country, George Strait. This is the classic movie from the 90s. The soundtrack is amazing. I Cross Your Heart, one of George's greatest of all times, along with Heartland. It's basically a movie. George Strait plays this character named Dusty. He doesn't play, he basically plays himself, but, different, not the same backstory and a different name. But he's tired of these huge shows they're having with lights and smoke and all this other stuff that his manager's making him do. He just wants to go back to basically what George Strait did in concerts. Just stand there and sing. And trust me, I've seen him in concert. It's not boring. Just to sit there and, me and my mom went. I won tickets on the radio. On the radio, I think it was 2005. I remember it was snowing out, and we didn't know if we'd even be able to make. We had to take a cab. The weather was so bad. Didn't know if we'd even make it. But the funny thing about that is they played like 10 clips of songs, and you had to, vary 2 or 3 seconds. And you had to guess every single one right. And I called in, and you had to be caller number 9 on the radio anyway. But I got them all right. Won 2 tickets. Me and my mom went. He just stood there and sang. He had a mic. Some of his shows you'll see he has a revolving stage, so he can just stand in one spot and but everybody gets to see him. But on this one they didn't have the stage. They had microphones set up 4 spots on a square stage, and he would do a few songs and move to different ones. And he could have done that for 10 hours, and we would have been on the edge of our seats and screaming at the top of our lungs. Anyway, that's what the character wants to do, is just that type of stuff. And then he ends up just going away. And then this idiot that works on the road crew, they put him in his outfit and dim the lights, and he's lip syncing. and trying to be him. It was actually, I can't remember his name, but the guy who played Gary from Early Edition. He was, I think his name was Bubba? Can't remember. I'm going to have to watch that again. I love that movie. But anyway, while he's off the road, George Strait, Dusty, the character, he falls in love with this girl, and at the very end, he, after, as all love stories do, they have problems and they're not together anymore. He decides to finally go back on the road, but he's doing things the way he wants. And she gets it's her and her dad and their brothers. She's like rides in the rodeo, and they own this farm, and they get taken to this, they get tickets mysteriously out of nowhere and get taken to this concert, and which I guess she didn't realize it was him, because I think he had a small beard and a ponytail off, so she didn't recognize who it was. But then he comes out, and then she sees it, and she's like, she finally gets it, and the big love story kiss at the ending. Just a great movie. But sorry, this podcast is going forever. But I'm going to end with a little bit of the news. This being October of '92, obviously this is election year. Bill Clinton would win the first of his two, reigns. He's a champion. The champion of the United States presidency. First of his two terms in office. But they had the first ever three-person debut. Three-person debate. They had George Bush Sr., who was the president, was running again, obviously didn't win. Bill Clinton, and then freaking big ears, that's all I remember about him, Ross Perot. And I think he was independent or whatever party he was running. But yeah, Bill Clinton won that. I told the story before how I acted like I was Bill Clinton, and my friend at school, she was Hillary Clinton, and we acted like idiots, but I just kept going, and everybody's like, okay, this is lame now. But I've told that story before. But thanks for checking out the podcast. Bonus episode coming out Friday, top 50 Nickelodeon shows of all time. I've already told you about all that. Next week we'll be going for episode number 18. I can't believe we're 18 episodes in and I haven't missed a week. I don't want to jinx myself there. Looks like I'll be home a lot since I ain't got no van to go anywhere, so might as well make podcasts. We're going to be, anyway, taking our fourth trip back to 1997. This time we're going to July. And then I was 13 years old at the time, and I just finished 7th grade and failed. So I think it was last week, I talked about my second year in 7th grade. This week I'll be talking about how I failed and how fun that summer was, knowing that we were basically grounded all the time in Marky Fo land, but that was extra grounding time. Anyway, thanks for checking out the podcast. Facebook, YouTube, Spotify. If you want it somewhere else, let me know. I'll find a way to get it on there. We'll see you next time.
Tales from the 90's never die. In our hearts they testify. VCRs and mixtape spins, where every tale begins. Tales from the crypt, marathons, wrestling wars.